Thank you for everybody here. Got my brother here with me today and stuff, so you know what, I'm already blessed. I'm thankful right now. So thank this choir for singing the song today. So let's do right now. We're going to have our exposition right now. Reverend Allen Ford from the Great Word Baptist Church. Amen. Come on, Pastor Ford. Come on, Pastor Ford. Come on, Pastor Ford.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Thomas. Getting y'all riled up. Now, if I don't do so well, y'all blame him. But it's good to be here.
Amen.
See our faces again for this little small exposition we're going to do here. This exposition will be coming from 2 Corinthians chapter 2. I'll be reading verses 14 through 17. Verses 14 through 17. I'll be reading from the King James. You might have an NIV or the New Living Translation. But I'll be reading from the King James. Once again, 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 14 through 17, and it reads, "Now thanks be unto God, which always calls us to triumph in Christ.
All right.
And make manifest the Savior of his knowledge by us in every place. For we are unto God a sweet Savior of Christ,
Yes.
in them that are saved, and in them that perish. To the one we are the fragrance or Savior of death unto death, and to the other we are the Savior of life unto life. And who is sufficient for these things? For we are not as many which corrupt the word of God, but as sincerity, but as of God, and inside of God, speak we in Christ."
All right. All
May
right.
be seated. Thank you so much. Quick prayer, Lord, we bow in your presence. We thank you for this opportunity to share your word with your people. You are an awesome God. We thank you for this holiday season that you brought us to this appointed time once again to share with your people and to fellowship. And truly our fellowship is with you and your Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And now, Father, forgive us of our sins and those sin against us. Thank you for family and friends. Thank you for Pastor Thomas and his church as they open up their hearts and doors to us tonight. We pray that you will bless them in a special way. And now, Holy Spirit, have your way in this place tonight. That hearts may be touched and lives may be changed. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
In these verses, the Apostle Paul, in this chapter, really, he's dealing with a couple of issues here. And what happens is, the church at Corinth has a lot of issues in it.
All right.
It was dysfunctional. It found itself in disarray. And so the Apostle Paul had to send a letter to them by Titus in verse 4 of this chapter because he wanted them to understand how much he loved them.
Right.
So in verse 4 he said, "Out of much affliction and anguish of heart, I wrote unto you with many tears, not that ye should be grieved, but that you might know the love which I have more abundantly unto you."
Yes.
So he loved this church, and that's where it should be. We should love one another, right? Amen. And the Apostle Paul loved this church in such a way, and he knew that he had to write this severe letter because of what was going on in Corinth.
Right.
So he wrote the letter and he sent it by Titus, and he talked about a brother who had offended him in the church. And he said, if somebody has called the wrong in the church, then you ought to forgive that brother or sister. And if you forgive him, then I forgave him. And if you forgive him, I forgave him. If I forgave him, I forgave him in the person of Christ.
Right.
Even when I'm absent, I still forgive them in the person of Christ.
Yes.
And he said you ought to do it so that brother might not be swallowed up with over much sorrow. And you ought to forgive him, lest Satan take advantage of us, because we become ignorant of his devices, and we shouldn't be ignorant of his devices. Because Satan wants to destroy the church, right? He wants to keep the church in disarray. He wants to keep us fussing and fighting. And there's nothing worse than a fussing and fighting church. Especially around Thanksgiving time.
Amen for
We
that.
want to be giving thanks to God for his many blessings, and we come to the church and all we're doing is fussing and fighting, and we're going about it the wrong way, and Satan is taking advantage of us, and God hates division. Matter of fact, he said in Psalm 133, behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And so the Apostle Paul, he's writing, and then he says in verse 12, he says, guess what God did? God opened a door for me to preach the gospel. Yeah. In short, it was an effective door to do evangelism. He said, I'm ready to preach, but something has happened to turn his attention away from preaching. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about, for this couple more minutes, thanks be unto God. Yeah, that's exactly what he's talking about. But in verse 13, the Apostle Paul has, this problem was weighing on his mind. His thoughts were drifting. His heart is filled with anticipation, and he was eager, and he has anxiety going on. Have you ever felt anxiety coming over you? Have you ever had anticipation that you're waiting to see a family member come down the road, or somebody said they're going to come for Thanksgiving, but they don't show up, and you got this great anxiety, this anticipation? So the Apostle Paul says, I'm waiting for Titus to come back to tell me how you received my letter. All right. And in verse 13, he said, I have no rest in my spirit because I found not Titus. Listen, Titus should be here by now. Yeah. My mind is way down. I'm drifting in my thoughts. I can't preach the gospel like God would want me to, because I'm worried about Titus, because I'm really worried about the church at Corinth. Right. Because I love that church. That church has great promise. They have all the gifts, but yet they're in disarray. So I had to give them a severe letter, but I'm waiting for Titus to come and tell me how you received the letter. You know how it is. When the pastor has to tell you some things, and he's anticipating now how you're going to receive it. He's anticipating now, you're going to still like him? Are you going to still say amen when he preaches? Or you're going to say, no. Yeah. And so here he is with this gospel to preach here. Titus has to come, and he finds himself in the middle of all this. He's worried about this church. His anxieties are taking over. So he says, I'm taking my leave of them, and I'm going into Macedonia. But when it gets to verse 14, something happened all of a sudden. In other words, he says, now, the word now is at this time. He says, now, thanks be unto God. He has it all on his mind, right? He's worried. He's going through. You know how we are. We worry about things. How am I going to pay my bills? I don't know if my children are going to be all right. Man, if I can just save up enough retirement money, if I can just pay my bills. But listen, the Apostle Paul is not unlike us. He has some worries. He has some trials and tribulations. He has some heartaches and some pains. But something happened in verse 14 that caused him to stop. The first thing you see is the abruptness of thanksgiving. All right. He says, thanks be unto God. In other words, this was abrupt. All of a sudden, he's worried about Titus, he's worried about himself, he's worried about Corinth, and all of a sudden he says, but thanks be unto God, which always calls us to triumph. My brothers and sisters, when you're going through, you ought to stop and say, thanks be unto God, which always calls me to triumph. Thanks be unto God, which always calls me to come through. What is he thanking God for so abruptly? Yeah. He said, the first thing he says, there is victory in my position in Jesus Christ. Thanks be unto God that always calls to triumph in Christ. The word in means position. He says, I'm thanking God abruptly because of my position in Christ. Yeah. In other words, this position in Christ, I didn't get it myself. Christ died on the cross for me, and because he died on the cross for me, God places me into the body of Christ. So I'm thanking God for my victorious position in Christ. Because the word triumph means that we're in the possession. The Apostle Paul, remember the Roman general, is going through the possession, and he sees how Christ, or how the Roman general, he's leading out of possession, bringing back the spoils of war. And so therefore he says, I am one of Christ's spoils of war. Satan thought he had me, but Christ delivered me, and now I'm in a possession with Christ. Thanks be to God, which always causes us to triumph in Christ. So he's thanking God for his victorious position in Christ. Oh, but he's thanking God for his glorious privileges in Christ. He says, in other words, I have the privilege to be called a child of God because I'm in Christ. In other words, when I'm going through this Thanksgiving season, I don't have to sit there and take it. I can call on my Father because I'm in Christ Jesus, and he can deliver me. Thanks be to God, which always causes us to triumph in Christ. and sisters, when time gets bad for you, when time gets hard for you, think about how Jesus delivered you. Think about how Jesus sets you free. Think about how you have a home in his kingdom. Think about how he's leading the procession and he's giving you the spoils of war. So that when you cry out to God, Father, I stretch my hand and then God bless you each and every time. Lord, I need you. God, come through every time. Lord, I'm giving you thanksgiving. God, come through every time. Thanks be to God who always calls us to triumph. He thanks God for the abruptness. You see the abruptness of the Thanksgiving all, but what about the assurance of his Thanksgiving? He says in the verse, he says, thanks be to God who always, he always calls us to overcome. He always calls us to win. Don't you know in Jesus Christ, you are always a winner? Don't you know in Jesus Christ, you can always overcome? Thanks be to God who always, and how does he do it? Because if you have to lead the procession, and you are the general, then you have sovereign power. Christ has sovereign power. And because of his sovereign power, he always calls us to triumph. My brother and sister, no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad it gets, just think of how bad it gets. Just think about what the Apostle Paul said. God always causes you to triumph. He will